what the vote needs. It's like, there are like many ways to interpret this, like whether you voted for or against the proposal, right? Because it received this controversial vote. But most likely he will agree that many people prefer decentralized wallets to light wallets, right? For whatever reasons. And the second one is many people would like their Daedalus times to be quicker, right? Whether you agree if my proposal is feasible or not, I hope that you at least agree with this statement, the statement of the problem, right? So at least the problem that this proposal tries to solve is there, right? Next, speaking about the value. Again, this is mostly to share the mental context why I personally believe it's valuable, right? And feel free to critique it, but here are some factors and thoughts that I personally have. One, Cardano has over about 4 million Cardano addresses. How many users? Hard to say, because it's likely many addresses per one user. We can assume 1 million. If you would like to challenge this number or have more accurate, tell me, right? The second assumption is that about 30–40% of users use Daedalus. Where I get this number? I found some statistics on the participation in the catalyst voting. Again, this is just a proxy, but this is the assumptions that I personally go through. And based on the engagement of the voters with the proposals, I assume it's reasonable, right? And why they use the Daedalus? It's decentralized, so it does not depend on any centralized kind of company, right? And second, there is also a chance that basically it's the first wallet that one can find when Google's for Cardano wallet, right? So it's the most promoted one. And in my opinion, the decentralized wallet brings independence from centralized light wallet providers, and it brings the ability to query blockchain in a private mode so that no intermediary can intercept basically what I'm trying to kind of investigate. And some high ticket issues, in my opinion, basically what creates the problem. One is the cost of user time spent simply on waiting. When someone wants to check the balance or send a transaction, right? The other big issue is the friction in onboarding new users. Specifically, when someone wants to investigate Cardano, the first step is to get a wallet, just to understand it. And if the sync time is so long, the user can just drop out, so never finish waiting and not experience Cardano. And what it means, lower demand for other, because if they didn't figure out how to use technology, they likely won't buy it, right? And the same comes to the friction in engagement. For example, you are on a vacation, right? And you would like to quickly check your balance, right? But you have only like 5 minutes. You have no luck, right? Because the synchronization time, if you did not use your wallet like for a week or a month, will be likely 15+ minutes. And basically, like some back of the envelope calculations, but it's a huge number, right? If you look, for example, the cost of user time, if you just assume this 1 million users that weekly check their balance, it's like 1 million users, 52 weeks, 1/4 of an hour wait, and I'm here being generous, like 15 minutes of wait time, and assuming $50 per hour, the cost of the user time. We're speaking about something close to the billing. And if we start speaking about the friction cost, for example, the onboarding cost, because wallet is basically one of the first few events in the user journey of a new Cardano user. We are likely speaking about the demand for others, so we are likely speaking about the market capitalization. And we can speculate if it's just 1% or 5%, but it's a huge numbers, right? So it's all hundreds of millions. And this, in my opinion, sooner than later, solving this problem, right? I'm speaking right now, not the problem, not the solution that I presented, but the problem is important. And things that accelerate that are important, right? And when there are big problems, sometimes it's a good idea to fund multiple teams, right? Let me know if there are any questions about this value slide, or I'll go further to the feasibility. Okay, then I go to the next one. So feasibility. First, I would like to start with the IOG's position, right? Again, I assume there is no one from IOG, but I'm trying to kind of represent it to the best of my ability, how I understand, right? And I just had a call with them, with the wallet team yesterday. So first, they believe that networking is not a bottleneck. Second, they believe that the bottleneck is the CPU performance. Then they believe that there are sections of the code that cannot be parallelized. I'll talk about that in detail. And then they believe there is some room for optimization, but it's minimal without breaking the Ouroboros trust model. Can I explain what it means? And the last one is that they believe that Mithril is a good potential solution for crucial shifts, right? So this is my current understanding of their position based on the Charles video, based on my communication with the wallet, right? And here I would like to talk about the alternative viewpoint, right? So basically why I kind of believe in my proposal and why I'm advocating. One is to speak about the optimization potential, one needs to speak in numbers. So what is the number of cryptographic operations per block? What is the CPU cost of doing one cryptographic operation? To know exactly if the parallelization of operation is linear or constrained, and so on. To understand what is the number of code sections that can be or cannot be parallelized. Because saying that something is not an X possible, we need a number, okay, but what is these upper boundaries, 4X, 5X, and that requires analysis and understanding of the capabilities of the current hardware. And there is no such analysis, right? As of now, the IOG's position is sadly qualitative only. So it's just a speculation. Imagine this case. If you ask a developer, like, if something is possible to optimize by 20%, likely they will say yes, right? Even the IOG's developers, right? If you say 2X, maybe 10X, who knows, right? But this exactly like estimation that takes into account the capabilities of the hardware and specific properties of the Cardano block specification and so on, will allow us to speak about this. And later, I will be sharing like why I believe that my position that the claims of 10X improvement are feasible is possible, right? Here are several like specific topics I would like to mention, right? For example, on networking, right? So right now, the IOG maintains that networking is not an issue, and that the CPU is bottleneck, but without a specific analysis or a design or an experiment design, which can clearly show that it is or it is not the bottleneck, I can, even assuming that CPU is the bottleneck statement is correct, I can assume that ineffective network can still be a problem. For example, the context switches between the kernel and the user space, because network packets are much smaller when the big discretes, right? So pre-downloading the blockchain can still optimize the code. CPU cache becoming cold because the code switches between networking code that does one thing and likely operates with big amounts of memory, and let's say a cryptographic verification code which likely operates with smaller memory, right? And doing this in batch, right, executing similar instructions in big batches likely tends to the improvement. And so in my opinion, this needs a more serious investigation than just kind of blindly believing that it is not important, right? Then speaking about the better using multi-core CPUs. Cardano is actually a blockchain that is better positioned to use multiple core CPUs. Why? Because it has this EUTXO model, right? So basically a tree of transactions. The second story, it's more like about why it's a serious scalability issue. If you just think about like modern desktops, right? Or these like huge high performance desktops, they can have like 128 cores. Think about the Cardano nodes that run on servers again. So this inability to fully utilize multi-core CPUs can sooner or later become a problem. So it's better to at least precisely understand where this kind of optimization boundary is. And for example, based on my current understanding, again, I have not received any statements from IOG at the moment, right? So I can just speculate. So the segments of the code that are hard to parallelize, the sections, the verification of stake pool block signing rights happens, because stakes are redistributed every epoch, right? So without knowing that the epoch is finished, we cannot know which stake pool has the right to sign a given block in a given point of time, right? But this is just 1 second. I'm sorry, 1 segment. It doesn't mean that once we know the block, we cannot process in parallel and verify the transactions in a given block, and that the parallelization factor will be low, right? So the segments of the code that are easier to parallelize, in my opinion, right? Happy to kind of critique. One is address ownership, right? It's just pure cryptographic operations. Transaction signatures. There is some potential in reconstruction of transaction trees, because small tree is hard, right? But when we have big tree with many branches, it's possible to schedule verification of different branches at the same time, right? So it's something that requires investigation as well. So in my opinion, it's not impossible, but requires effort and motivation to improve performance. And last but not least, like, we can always optimize the single core CPU performance. We can consider faster cryptographic libraries and so on. And while it's a risk and a challenge, because broken cryptography, right, can break everything. We're speaking about the wallet use case and in special mode, right? So it's not such a big risk, as long as we understand the performance potential, and then can make this trade-off between the risk and the performance. And this will be one of my key points in this whole presentation, that are smarter trade-offs between the risk when we measure it quantitatively and performance. Now, another story, right? So this risk and performance. Right now, the statement from Cardano is, it is impossible, or maybe not more. There are only minor potential optimizations if we do not break break the Ouroboros model, which to me sounds mostly, if we do not change anything, it's really hard to optimize, which is like more like a truism. And here, I would like to kind of talk more about the trust and risk and go from this binary definition of trust. Okay, we either have this Ouroboros model or we do not have it.
Hey, Alex.
Yes.
Is it possible for you to slow down a little? It's hard to follow.
Okay, please. But the slides are mostly like notes, right? So it's better to kind of engage with the discussion. And I understand that this topic is kind of hard, and I prepared it quickly because I was just reacting to the comments. So if you have some quick questions, just pause me here. It's totally fine. And I'll try to ask after each slide if it's okay to move forward, right? And speaking here about the risk and trust. So trust is binary, right? Ouroboros model or not, right? And it immediately sounds like if it's not, then basically all the crazy stuff can happen. But let's speak about the risk, which can be defined as probability of some event multiplied by the damage when it happens. And I would like to prepare you an example, alternative trust model, which is kind of something I was thinking along the lines when speaking about this, let's use BitTorrent that everybody was laughing about, right? So a specific algorithm. Daedalus calls n randomly selected nodes in the Cardano network and gets the latest block from each, right? If all return the same block, it finds the hash of a previous block, right? Because each block contains a hash of the previous block. And then using the hash of the previous block as the request ID, download the history from some delivery network. And here, it's actually completely not important if it's BitTorrent or something else, right? Because we have the hashes of the received from the trustworthy source, which is Cardano network. And we can use it to kind of unroll the whole blockchain and verify that its context is exactly the same as on the stateful node, right? And let's speak about the probability of this kind of alternative trust model being kind of bad, right? So basically leading to the bad outcome. And what we have here, one is basically the likelihood of hash collisions in Blake to be like 256 bits, right? It's unlikely to experience like even one list forever. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, right? But this is very, very, very extremely low number. The second one is basically this number should be multiplied by the likelihood of all randomly selected nodes returning some malicious data. And this is basically the kind of inverse likelihood to encounter a malicious node to the power of n. So basically the number of randomly selected nodes that we query. Again, this is a very small number, likely less than like 1 to the power minus 10, but we can argue about this. But the key point that when we multiply them, because these are based on the chain rule of independent probabilities, we get like extremely low number, like 1 in a billion eternities, right? So probability is low, but now let's speak about the damage. What happens when hashes don't match? We just re-download using the traditional model. So basically our risk that once in a billion eternities, we download using the traditional code. Of course, I'm simplifying this case, but I'm just showing you that reasoning about trust in numeric quantitative measures allows for a user to make a better choice. Should they enable what I call like a turbo mode right now because they just check it balance or send in some simple transaction, which in any case will be validated by the Cardano network, right? Because this is not a proposal to apply this in kind of alternative trust model to the stateful nodes, right? It's just for personal decentralized wallet, which is more typical use case. And when to use the classic model because something more important is happening, right? And let me pause here because this is one of the key kind of points I would like to kind of present and discuss. Are there any questions about this topic?
Hi, Alex. Hi, Alex. How are you? Take a breath. Take a breath, man. You have been going marathon here for about 10 minutes. So yeah, grab a glass of water there. So I'm going to leave the more technical questions that are here to some of the better experts. I see a few of them in the room, so I'm going to let them do that. I actually reached out to you several weeks ago over LinkedIn, and I didn't get a response. So I was seeking you out because I was trying to verify some information from you that was really not technical. It's really just sort of in general how you are a member of the Cardano community. Now, I noticed in your proposal that you stated that you are a Plutus pioneer and I believe an Italic Prism pioneer as well. Which ID did you use on Discord for that? I'm trying to find you and I have not been able to find you.
That's a good question. Could you add this as a comment on idea scale and then I can share, right? So you can track it this way. I don't use LinkedIn very often these days. So likely I've missed. So the best way to reach out is through idea scale comment or direct message.
Oh, I do understand that
So
that's your preference.
if this is your
and that's
question,
fine.
what is my Discord, and would you like me to verify me? Please add the comment to the idea scale proposal, and I will respond.
I see. Okay. And do you have you also respond with the wallet that has your Plutus Pioneer collaborative or collective NFT that was given to all of us?
Good question. Not sure. So basically, I was following all the lectures, right, from the beginning to the end. But the activities that I didn't personally see value on, I might have not done, right? But if you would like to verify this, you can reach out to the IOG because they have all the emails of all the participants, and you can verify my credentials, right? If this is the topic. But let's move this to the end if you would like to continue, because this is not related to this slide.
Well, these. I understand that to you that this is a less important thing, but the reason that maybe that some of us in the community are concerned is because we haven't been able to verify who you are and who you say you are, and so so these are just as important questions as the questions of the technical nature, like I said.
Which
so
I'm happy to answer in the idea scale, but today I would like to focus on the value on feasibility. Because based on what I understand, this is much more popular critique.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and yield the floor back and let you go back into turbo mode, Alex.
Thank you. Are there any questions about the performance versus risk trade-off?
Where is this text that you're showing? Can you post a link to it?
So this is just my slide now, so not at the moment, but my intention is to share the video.
Okay.
Will it work?
Because I like to go.
Sure. So this is not some secret rocket science, right? And I don't claim that basically this is like a perfect vision, but I'm just sharing a vision, an opinion, right, of an alternative, a way to kind of approach the personal decentralized wallet. Are there any questions about here? Or I'll slightly go back, as you call, the turbo mode.
Question.
Yep,
Maybe you
please
can
go
post
ahead.
the notes, Alex, to the idea scale page then, so that people can share and see it as well. But yeah, let's use some decorum, I guess, as we go into this. Anyone that has a question, definitely raise hands and these kinds of things. And yeah.
Yeah, Alex, just on that, I'm happy to moderate for you. That helps get questions into you in a orderly fashion. So Thivo had his hand up first, but I think he's taken it down. But I'll leave. Thivo, do you want to come in?
Well, I got a few questions, but I will start with it's less about feasibility in a sense that what is the have you considered contributing to network in a different way? Because I feel like you're spending a lot of community funds in order to improve one of the products, like having that good performance and optimizing to the maximum, compared to with that amount of money there could have been more promise put to the standards of creating wallets, having this different products basically for the community to use.
Basically, this is the question about value and the return on investment, right? Which for me is very highly connected. So let me explain to you. In my experience, because the Daedalus is this critical touch point in the user journey of many users, any friction point that stays there for years impacts the pace of growth of the Cardano community, right? Because we onboard less users at a smaller pace. And because of this, as the community grows, the market capitalization doesn't grow as quickly. The treasury funds doesn't grow as quickly, right? And in my opinion, this problem is so big that it should be, and in my opinion, can be solved, right? And you can think about this. What is the right way to allocate community finances? In my opinion, it's based on this return on impact. Why? Because when we fund projects that bring more impact and quicker, our treasury funds grow, and in the next cycle, we can do even more. But if we're doing some other orange, our treasury funds can decrease or diminish. But with every next time, our capability to fund something decreasing. Again, this is more likely like, we can go in depth into this discussion, but this is my story. I believe that this is such a big friction point for the new users entering the ecosystem, which is a huge touch point. that it needs to be solved independently of it by me, by the Daedalus team, by whomever. But based on my observation, the current wallet team does not believe this is a big problem, or maybe they believe that the relationship of the value, so basically this optimization potential related to the complexity of it, is not worth it, right? And this is where we disagree. Let me know if I have answered your question.
You did, but maybe if I can quickly put something obvious. If I want to see my balance, I can go to any Explorer website. There are many tools which communities have built to, I just drop in my hash and it says my balance. And some of them have niftier features, some I have to log in, some I don't have to log in. So you're comparing an impact based on how many people want to use to see their wallet balance. So I'm like, not really.
But you come to this fundamental question, why people prefer decentralized wallets, right? Again, this is more a question for likely Cardano product team, right? Let me quickly go to my kind of slide on the value. These are all my kind of speculations and assumptions, right? But one is, in some cases, you would like to be independent. What it means, you can get and check your balance and send a transaction as long as the whole Cardano network functions and not be dependent on performance of individual centralized provider. For example, in my experience, your ROI very often just goes crazy for particular moments of time. And this is one of the reasons why I personally don't use, again, this is just a speculation of one person's opinion, right? But from that opinion, I'm trying to generalize, because based on the information about the Catalyst vote, about 30–40% of the vote, maybe Harris can correct me here, right? I'm just taking some number from there, use Daedalus to vote as well. So I assume this is their primary vote for all operations. Why is that? It's a very good question, but it's definitely the recommended vote in Google when people search for Cardano wallet, right? Again, thinking of this like number of touch points and what directly influences the friction and the demand for other, it's there, right? For bad, for good, but it is. And ignoring this problem is, in my opinion, not the right approach.
All right, thanks, Stephen. There's quite a few questions, so we're gonna just try to keep pace with the questions, Alex, if that's all right.
So I would like to invite everyone, if you have specific questions, just write them on the DS scale. I answered all the comments, literally. And if you put your question there, I'll take time and answer it. And at the same
thanks,
time,
Alex. What I'll do, just to help for the audience here today, there's some questions that are coming through on the chat. I'll try and summarize the themes of those questions. I might ask you directly today, right now, just because we're all here. But what I'll do is I'll go to Ken, because there's been a lot of good patience of people with their hands up.
I have just a few more slides. This is the reason why I would like first to get questions on this particular slide, then go through 2 more slides. I'll try to slow down and they are less intense. And then we'll go into Q&A, and then I'll basically, maybe till 15 minutes on the hour, I will be here to answer any questions. Does it work? Because I would like to finish this line of thoughts, and then
okay.
I'll be all there.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, if we can speed through, well, you're already speeding through, so.
Okay. So basically, then we have this topic of Mithril, right? So first, it's a great solution, but it's not production ready. For example, it's not even on mainnet, as far as I know. Please correct me here if you have. Second, aggregator nodes will be run by only IG initially. So it's not a decentralized solution in the short term. And last one, it requires a separate distribution network, meaning they plan to use like interplanetary file system or the BitTorrent to deliver the actual data. So the kind of the distribution network, which I'm pushing here, is still there, right? And how to make it. So basically, it is good if it works, but it's not. And because this is a big ticket proposal, when designing the deliverables, I wanted to show results quicker, because this is the question of ROI that basically Tivo was basically pushing me off, right? If I take like huge amount of money and return you something in 10 years, it's completely worse than if I do something quickly and I can show something to the users within like 6 to 8 months. And because of this, making the dependency on Mithril is a risk in my opinion, but there is an opportunity, right? For example, because kind of reworking Daedalus will teach it to use alternative methods of getting the blockchain history. And assuming the APIs are not completely crazy, and I assume this is switching to Mithril later should not be a problem. And this is the opportunity that I personally see. Again, we haven't fully discussed this with IOG, right? I'm just sharing my personal opinion at the moment. But these are some of the concerns that people should be aware of. There is no distribution network in the design. They just want to cryptographically verify that basically the state of the blockchain is legit. But the next steps need to be done to deliver the data to the kind of PCs of the users, right? And the second one is not even on the mainnet. So how I'm supposed to integrate it in the 6 months or whatever, right? Because these basically rollups and basically signatures won't be ready for the mainnet blockchain. Again, so it's a great solution, but given the constraints and the pressure, I think it's a smarter way to kind of extend the Daedalus in such a way that multiple alternative ways to get blockchain history are possible. Take a look at the Mitchell API, ensure it can work, maybe do some minimal tests, but I cannot make it a promise or a delivery. I guess this is my personal thought, because it's not ready yet. Right, and I think just one more slide about the next steps, and I'll get back to the questions. So what are the next steps actually? So at the moment, right, as you have all heard, right, that IG has introduced this statement of milestones, kind of milestone before funding, right? And it is approved by the IG themselves. So this, in my case, will be the wallet team, right? And the challenge team. And right now, we started working with them, so basically to prepare the statement of milestones, to make it more feasible from all points of view, right? And at the same time, create more value. And one of the discussion points is what to do with Mitchell. And likely, if you would like to challenge me on the specific delivery stories, is to wait maybe like 1 or 2 weeks, right, till this segment of milestones, at least some version is ready. It will be better discussion. And the second topic, we're discussing the experiments and estimations that can preciser evaluate the optimization potential. Because this is a topic, it's not fully explored in my opinion. Because it's very easy to say, no, we cannot optimize it, or CPU is not the bottleneck. But when there is no proof, I believe that the Cardano way is actually to demand proof. And this is what I'm trying to kind of get here. And
Okay,
just one slide, how best to communicate with me, right? So the quickest way to get an answer for kind of a longer form communication is idea scale. I literally answer all the comments here. Please put your bigger questions or more technical questions there. I'm trying to answer everything. You can review like maybe like 40 plus comments. I already answered most of the questions that basically I'm trying to cover in this presentation. Then just for announcements, because I'm not an active user of Twitter, so I cannot react. I had to kind of create this account because of this Twitter storm that I suddenly had to kind of share that there is an alternative opinion on what's going on, right? So there is no bad intent. So announcements I'll try to post with this Turbo Daedalus account. And last one, if you'd like to discuss contribution, for example, you care about this topic, happy to discuss, send a private message. Yeah, the same goes if you believe the project is kind of requires improvement. Also, please send this privately. And yeah, this is the questions time.
Okay, great, Alex. Thank you. So I'm going to go to Ken. Appreciate the patience, guys, for those with their hands up. Ken. If you still want to talk.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. Was this the question for me?
No, don't worry. No question yet, Alex. I'm just waiting for, Ken's off here.
Ken, please go ahead.
Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All good.
Okay. Since Daedalus is basically a full node, like the process of being able to independently verify the entire transaction history of the blockchain from the Genesis block, I think that's where the CPU load is coming from, because in order to validate each block, you need to have validation of the previous block if you're doing an independent validation of the entire network. And so, like, I don't see.
But let's talk about this, right? So this, where we come to this trust versus risk model, right? Assuming that you got the information about the most recent block from an independent Cardano nodes, which according to the spec have done all these validations. And if your objective is only check your balance or send a small low amount transaction, you're pretty in good hands. The probability of getting wrong results are very low. Why? Because of this cryptographic verification through hashes in the blocks, right? And the knowledge of the Cardano specification that each stake pool node independently verifies the rights of each block for inclusion, right? So I'm not saying it's exactly the same trust model, but what I'm saying, and I'm trying to kind of prove that if we compute the risk as the probability multiplied by damage, it will be still such a low thing that for most of the users, it's a better trade-off.
Yeah, like if you have like a different wallet, like say you clone the Daedalus wallet and you have a different one that's based on this other other validation model, or the trade-offs you're making are different as far as how
That's true.
much you want
But
to validate.
the
So,
way-
but with the regular Daedalus node, it is a full node in itself, and so the idea behind it is to be a full node and to validate the entire network. Like having a separate, like a fork of Daedalus, maybe like a separate wallet that uses this other validation model may be beneficial to the community, but having a wallet that is also a full node is also important.
But let me
Because of independent
present an
validation.
alternative way. So one, it does not need to be a fork, because I don't believe in forks, because I believe all users will use kind of the dominant solution. I believe in the configuration option, a switch. How do you feel today? Turbo or kind of safe? And this is it, right? And the second story, right? Daedalus was meant to be a full node by the engineers, but is this how the true users are using it? Is that assumption aligned with the user expectations of the majority of the users, right? And in my opinion, this solution may be risky initially, but introducing it as a switch, which is disabled by default in the first iteration, is fine. If the users use it, and because, right, we're speaking about the two algorithms, they can be automatically in parallel verified, right? Because the conclusions of one algorithm can be automatically verified by collecting the data over the course of time. We understand other equivalent, right? How often they lead to bad transactions, and over time it can be promoted to maybe some reasonable default or a setting that is being asked about during the installation. So I guess this is my answer. So I think forking is not a good way. Why? Because nobody will use a fork, but a configuration option is a good one.
Yeah, one other thing is once you validate the blockchain, you don't have to validate it again. Like you just have to continue from the last point which you were validating from. So like if you run your node and you validate up to the current time, and then you shut it down for a few months, you need to validate forward from that point beyond. And if you're using a separate validation model, then there's a mismatch between the validation process. Like if you can switch back and forth between different validation models, like it's not the same.
It's not the same, but
like,
algorithmic wise,
I don't see how they can both work in conjunction in the same. Like if you can choose one or the other when you start from the beginning, but you're not, I don't know if you can match between the two, or there may be a way to do it, but I'm not sure.
So to quickly answer, I think there is a way, but please write me this comment in IdeaScale, because I have just 10 minutes and I would like to give chance others to ask the questions. And I believe it is possible.
Thank you.
Just write me, I'll take time to answer it. Thank you. Andrew.
Hi, thanks for coming on the circle and answering questions.
No worries.
I'd like to ask about the assumption that you can parallelize anything when validating a blockchain. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding in your proposal of what a blockchain is. A blockchain, you can't validate a block unless you've validated the previous one. You have to take the output of the one as an input into validating the next one. And so because of that, you can't parallelize that. Then there comes the transactions inside the block, and you think, okay, well, maybe we'll parallelize validating the individual transactions. That also cannot be parallelized because some transactions depend on the previous transaction, even within a block. I work for the Drip Drops team. We're responsible for about 5% of the total traffic on Cardano. Every one of our transactions is built this way, where it depends on the previous transaction. So when we put transactions in a block, they are always top to bottom dependent on each other. There's no way to parallelize the validation of those. So
let me answer
that's why I believe that this entire proposal is just not feasible.
It's feasible. Let me quickly answer. So test case. Imagine a wallet without zero transactions. I'm sorry, with zero transactions. The most typical use case of a new user. Is it possible to parallelize the search of transactions that belong to that wallet? In my opinion, fully. right? Assuming we don't speak about validating the rights of the nodes to include a certain block, right? It's just a parallel search across all transactions, across all addresses included in all transactions, right? Now, speaking about the validating a wallet's history, right? The story is we need to include, when we speak about not the full stake node, but individual wallet, we need to consider only the blocks that include transactions related to that wallet.
Yeah, what
Right.
you're describing is an entirely unvalidated wallet. That's what you're describing, is being able to throw transactions out there, and you're relying on everybody else, all the other good wallets, to validate what you're throwing out there that may or may not be valid. Because
I'm
you
trying to
will
build this
not
argument.
be able to validate anything in your own wallet. I understand what you're looking at. You're just saying quickly scan only the addresses I care about, but then you can scan that chain that you've downloaded from somebody. It's entirely unvalidated.
But
is what
not
you're
from
talking about.
somebody, right? So this is the story. The most recent block from the blockchain is received from
So
the
you're
Cardano network.
trusting somebody else, which is exactly what a light
I'm
wallet
trusting the
does.
Cardano network in exactly the same way
It's a
as
light
Daedalus
wallet.
does it.
You're describing what a light wallet does. You're trusting somebody else, that other company. It's no longer a full node wallet at that
I'm
point.
trusting the Cardano network in exactly the same. I think we disagree, but please write me a comment and I'll try to more elaborately answer it. EB, I'm not sure if I pronounced it right.
Yeah, you pronounce it all right. That's exactly how.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
So I'm first gonna preface with the fact that I too do not find this proposal feasible, but I also think that there's some negligence you've expressed on your part. If you are so dedicated to the work being done about Daedalus, then if you're so connected to work being done by Daedalus and the team down there, you'd have known that the current work you'd have known about the current work being done on light mode, for example. Light mode is a spec that has been proposed since February and has been undergoing active testing as of even a week ago. What knowledge do you have on the light modes integration intended to actually improve data loss operations by actually, saying, an aggregated source of blockchain data from like an off-chain like you? How much knowledge do you have about that to even try to proceed with your proposal months after February?
So let's just double check. You challenged my credibility. I guess the beauty.
No. I didn't challenge your credibility. I challenged the feasibility of your proposal. Let's not get them twisted.
But you challenged the feasibility based on credibility, which is not a scientific argument. So
based on your negligence of ongoing work regarding the subject interest.
How this can lead to a specific algorithm not being there. So my point is to prove that something is not possible to optimize requires a numeric argument, and your argument is qualitative. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but please write down your comment. I'll try to answer.
No. I'm going to make it very clear. My argument is that you choose to fix something you're not even paying attention to. There's active ongoing work being done on this, and you chose to not even look into that and just propose something out of thin air. That's my argument right there. Do you understand this?
I understand it, but I believe it's irrelevant for a scientific dispute.
Oh, it's irrelevant for scientific dispute. Ongoing work that's publicly verifiable, and that's irrelevant.
We can go very far into this direction, but specific story, is it possible to optimize it 10x or not?
I rest my case.
Solving this problem, okay. Tevo, you have your last question before we close up.
My question is, because Daedalus is, I think it's open source, but it will require IOG to take these changes in as a GitHub approval. And I assume it will be done based on milestones, and the success of each milestone is when IOG approves one of the changes. And how long do you think it will take you to build that light wallet into Daedalus? And is IOG okay with having that feature?
That's a good question. So the way I structured proposal at the moment when I conceived it, it was totally clear for me that building proofs of concepts like quicker download, quicker verification is faster, because integrating a product or a new set of changes into existing product is always hard. And this is why in the proposals, I have reserved the whole second year for work, if it work with IOG to integrate, improve the code till it's ready for the acceptance, based on the kind of POCs that are ready and can be used by users, right? So basically, the initial plan was, again, this is all being discussed right now with the IOG, how best to structure. But what is the plan? Okay, assuming the network is the problem, right? Let's fix the network and bring a quicker, like I was calling this a proper app. Basically, you have a separate app that downloads the data and then launches Daedalus, right? This way, I do not need to integrate it as fully into IOG, but I deliver the value to the users. And at the same time, a parallel process of integration starts, which can launch, or take much longer. And this was the plan, right? Do prove it works, make something the users can use directly, and start this long and thorough process of integration of the public repositories. And this is why one of the reasons why the proposal is 2 years and such a high budget. I expect this not to be easy. There are already a number of technical challenges, and right, I'm optimistic that these can be solved, achieving the goal of 10x faster synchronization time for the users. So not for the full stake node, right, but for the personalized, decentralized wallet use case, which Daedalus, in my opinion, is, right from the user perspective.
On that note, I will just say that I'm unfortunate that you didn't understand what Catalyst was meant to be. We didn't expect full node changes, like take 2 years. It would have been better if you have scoped it down to, hey, let's have an experiment. Let's get IOG, get some papers on road. I think you would have gotten that funding, like as we can see, and we would have left much more wider opportunity for the community and come back when it's successful. But yeah, I guess that is just lesson learned from how to run innovation funds.
Okay, thank you. I have time just for one last question. Mario, please go. Sorry, we cannot hear you.
Hey, Jack, and I know Alex here. I do want to throw out one last question that seems to be coming from the community. But Mario, I'll let you go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yes,
we do.
Oh, sorry, problem with the mic. Yeah, I don't know about the feasibility, but in your proposal, you mentioned that you and another company, you mentioned in boutique consulting company, will help you on building this project. I'm curious to know where is it, what is it, what this, how big is the team, if there are any compatible skills, because it's quite challenging. It's very difficult to find people, and yes, some information that I could not find.
So the team, right? So I guess to answer specifically, I personally running this team in Germany, right? And I think the team is not the right way, right? If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you will see that I have spent more than 15 years working for big tech, right? And went through a number of IPO processes, which led me to create this company. And how it works over the time, I have this network of engineers whom I can use.
No, but you mentioned a company.
Project.
You mentioned a company. There's no company in the proposal. There's no company in your LinkedIn profile.
Okay, because in
that's
Germany, when one is a digitalization advisor, there are like tax advantages. So specifically, it's like individual proprietor role registered in my name in Germany, right? And through this, I have contracts with other people whom I know from my previous.
Yeah, but that means you have to build the team. It's a $1 million proposal. You have to build the team, and then you are saying, "Oh, in 2 years we will deliver it." You
Please understand that the specific skill sets I already have in my network. The second problem why I didn't name the deal, the specific members, it's about the privacy laws, right? So until we have a specific,
you can put also them as a GitHub profile anonymous, but no, you can see the story of the people.
I need them to fully agree, but for that, the first step of the project, the validation, needs to finish. If you look at the deliverables, each of the steps first, do investigation, then launch a story.
But you cannot
my,
say I deliver this if you don't have the people in your team. You have to find the
if
people
I don't
and then
have
eventually say
experience
deliver it.
operating in
6
this model,
months, 2 months. I have 10 people, 2 months. 20 people, 6 months. No, I don't have anybody, only me 5 years. And then
let
you are
me give you an
outside of
example,
the...
right? Because we can go very deep into this. Please write a comment. I'll try to prepare a more elaborate response. But when I have a specific role, let's say a person who understands how to organize a content delivery network, and I have 5 different people who generally open for part-time contracts to do this, what is my likelihood of failing? And with whom I have
But
worked?
you are saying you have, but you have to give proof that you have someone. Otherwise, no, this is the proposal. We have to judge the feasibility. So otherwise, there are 2 million developers in the world. I will know someone in 4 years. I can do something. It's abstract. I need more.
A valid problem, but I believe would be a much better challenge during the primary story. So I have no intention to misinterpret this, right? This is how I personally operate, because I right now do not need the capacity to work on projects day to day, so I can select the interesting one. And I pick the team from existing networks for project. And this, maybe it's unorthodox, maybe it's know how the industry works, but after 15 years of experience, this is what works for me. And what can I'll say? We disagree. Yeah. If you have,
absolutely.
If you would like to,
it's not the way of the industry works.
Can I ask more questions? Feel free to do this.
Anyway, I did my question.
But anyways, we need to close this. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have more questions, I would like to say, write a comment on Idea Scale, right? So I do answer all the comments there.
$1 million.
Good one, bad ones.
Longer.
I'm sorry?
So for $1 million, you can't hang around for a little longer?
I have a train literally, so I need to go. If there is high demand, please write me. I'll try to schedule another one.
Alex, not everyone uses Idea Scale. You already have a Twitter account. Could you please communicate with us via Twitter? Almost everybody on Cardano is
If you take a look at the content of the questions, it's really hard to provide an answer in several sentences. Second point is that I would like to maintain the whole discussion in one place, not to spread it across multiple channels. So please
have you considered what the community prefers? They are the people funding you.
I do not have the understanding if there are more community on Twitter on Idea Scale. Maybe I'm wrong.
In that case, you're wrong. More people on Twitter, and we communicate via Twitter pretty frequently. You're invited to have Twitter discussions with us live. You don't have to write threads. I think that would be a great live communication method. If
there is a high demand, I can try to do this. But if you can, okay. So like at least 2 people.
So I did want to just state that, IOG doesn't necessarily endorse, all the statements that were made here. And we certainly are expecting a statement of milestones that will be shared with the community once that's published, because we do need to determine something that is feasible for sure.
Okay, then on this note, I would like to thank everyone and invite to write a comment. And if there is demand for further discussion, I can organize another after town hall.
Thank you for your time, Alex.
And yeah, it got heated, but I try to do my best to answer your questions. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, everyone.
We can stay here, even if Alex went away. Maybe
Alex,
better for us to understand each other.
He seems very nervous.
I mean, he just
Yeah.
called IOG's work not scientifically provable. That's what he just did, literally in 4K. Okay, when you throw the facts at him and he throws stuff like that, that's just recipes for being a charlatan. All right, and frankly, I think we need to prevent the whole milestone thing and start an actual petition to actually ask the approval. Stop the damage before any damage is done. I don't care if the milestone is like 50K or 100K before they check anything. That 50K, 100K is the inflation every ADA holders agreeing to. That's every 50K or 100K inflation we're agreeing to release into the ecosystem and lose our value for that. Make your inflation count.
Okay, let's not be all talk. How would we get this petition going? Let's brainstorm strategies.
Well,
petition. All right.
Voltaire.
And just remember,
anything you guys ask for and expect of Alex. Now, I don't entirely agree with his proposal or the amount of money, but anything you ask for and expect of him, you will also expect of yourself in the next funding round. So it's the higher you set that bar, the higher you're going to have to jump. So just be alert to that. I'm not trying to scare you off. I'm just saying high standards are good, and high standards apply to everyone. I think everyone did a pretty good job clearly identifying, what's going on here, and I think you give them a chance to get the milestones out there, and execute the plan. As unfeasible as we might think it is, if it runs into a security hazard, we have enough experts in the community to say, hey, there's a security hazard here.
I saw another risk I'd like to bring up. I looked at the value prop where, we're just trying to pitch, hey, the value of this. And, a lot of those assumptions were, I didn't want to get into it, but, they could be argued. But there's another angle to look at this. And Daedalus is the largest wallet in Cardano. And to my understanding, Daedalus Flight wasn't upgraded over the fork. So this is a product that will likely not be carried on by IOG. And Harris, if you guys know better, please stop me. But now if we have somebody else that wants to carry on that name and carry that momentum and screws that up, that could do a hell of a lot more damage to us than just giving them the money. So that was a different angle that I saw.
Yeah, I also believe, it hasn't been formally announced, but Lace will be the future of wallets coming out of IOG, starting with the Light wallet, then the Mithril synced full node wallet. It'll have, just like the old Ethereum wallets where they started in a light mode and then you give them a little bit to sync and then they're a full node wallet at that point.
What's up, Ivan?
Hey, so just a small question. So if a proposal kind of contradicts itself, shouldn't it be disqualified? Can we even expect the proposal to deliver if it contradicts itself?
Right. That follows. Thank you, Ivan, because that also follows on to my question that I felt was pertinent as to his credentials. If you're going to state credentials and you don't have an easy way to prove those credentials, is your proposal valid? To Rick's point, yes, that's a high standard, but that's a high standard I believe we should all attain. I think that is a reasonable high standard for the community. So it's unfortunate that we're not having this conversation with Alex as well, because I feel like if Alex were able to listen and participate with the community, there could be value from some of what, not necessarily in his proposal, but there could be value from a developer that could be a new member of our community. But unfortunately, coming in and not listening to the community, not learning from the community and working with us, that this has caused friction. This has caused significant friction, and we're going to have to, as a community, find out how we want to resolve this friction.
To anyone who's wondering, I'm creating a petition on change.org right now. So that's probably a way to start, if anything, and we'll go from there.
I'd just like to make a point that says
share that.
He's applied for funding, but it's like that's the limit of his funding. So he's not necessarily going to get all those funds unless he starts to prove that the project's working and hitting the milestones and that sort of stuff. So there are a level of check and balance in there to make sure that he just doesn't walk away with 700K for putting this proposal in there. So it's important to remember this part of it as well.
I would say we're a bit lucky that he chose to choose IOG's product. So if he proposes a milestone and okay, this is going to happen when this and this is done, IOG will look at it. And if they say, yes, it's feasible, then we have something to look at. But we have so I'm saying that we kind of have a bit filter between us, the community, having to be very precise on, okay, how is doing stuff. So I don't know is the petition beforehand is needed, because then we kind of create a culture where we're trying to always stop people for doing, having different opinions and not really trying to pursue something they think is true.
So yeah, so just to double down on this petition, I'm seeing it as us saying that the voters' vote is not immutable, right? I'm not sure if the petition, if the petition is
there are problems with Catalyst in general with VCS. I mean, we've seen it with Dimitri Fernando, and that the system can be rigged, and it's been provably rigged before. So the argument that it's been rigged again isn't off the table.
Yeah, and I don't
Well,
think
IOG has come
think
out,
change.org is the right venue to do that, because change.org could be equally gameable or bottable, and it wasn't pre-agreed. It's not like the terms of agreement. So the ADA voters voted with their ADA for something that might not be feasible. This might just be an expensive lesson learned, or it could be productive in some way, but I don't think a change.org petition is the right answer. That's just my thing.
Undo it with a vote.
Yeah, you know what?
I don't know if
We have an open source quadratic voting mechanism.
There's
I don't
votes.
know if questioning the vote and the validity of this award has value compared to, it seems that we have a milestone process that just launched. Does that not seem like the vehicle as another safeguard for once something is approved, to focus on really ironing out what this milestone-based funding is, as a way to target this versus going back to the vote? The vote happened, we have a process for that.
Well, Lido, the whole point is to prevent the loss before it even happens. These milestones exist for, like, you know, your usual semi-questionable situations where it's like, okay, sure, we'll give it a chance. But the blatant, you know, just the blatant state of this particular proposal is not one where you're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt to go with. It's like, what smells like a duck, walks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. Not, oh, it smells like a duck, but we're not going to judge it just yet. Let's give it milestones to figure out if it walks like a duck.
So just to be clear, we're in consensus that it's more likely a scam than not.
No, I'm not agreeing.
No, there's not consensus there. And I will say, just,
much better if it was a scam.
Well,
He truly believes.
I was on a space with IOG. The shape of the voters and the yes votes and no votes, this proposal is not alone. There were, Chris mentioned there was 4 or 5 proposals that looked like this as far as voter count, yes votes, upvotes, will participation. So I don't know if this energy, we don't have access to Jormungandr. I just don't know if if energy is well spent looking at the votes and whether or not there was a scam there.
If anybody from IOG is still here, sorry, I can't really see on my screen. Can you guys tell us whether or not you're doing any type of analytics like that to see, to identify potential bad actors that may be submitting similar proposals, similar kind of hype themes from, you know, I guess civil defense is what I'm trying to paraphrase that down to.
Yeah, well, I'm on camera, aren't I? So I'm pretty obvious from IG.
Sorry, there's a bunch of screen. Okay.
No, it's fine, but I can't hide because you all guys you're looking at me, and some of you know who I am. So look, we've got Jormungandr is a very private. So not only is it private to IOG anyway, but the data that's in and stored on Jormungandr is also very private, even to us.
I see.
So there is.
Understood.
Yeah, there's limited information that we can get out. We do have knowledge and awareness of the wallet distribution at different values, how many wallets are participating at what values they're participating at, and therefore you can work out voting power, you know, across each fund. We are looking to share that data. We need to put it into a format that makes sense, though, because it's still not very readable. But we will look to share that so that the community can make their own. Dissect it in their own way. But what I would say is that in my opinion today, there is no corruption or collusion happening on the sidechain itself with voting. And that's me seeing some of the raw data that's not in a sort of friendly way in the current state. But It's just the way the system's built, and it's the way the voting is designed, right? And it has its, it has its flaws, and we know, and everyone knows that, right? Doing by voting weight and having a yes/no dynamic adds challenges, and it's not a future-proof way of voting, in my opinion. And we all know that, I think. And we're looking at DIDs, we're looking at different options as well, that are coming through. We know the catalyst is still an experiment, and we are moving into the 10th iteration. And Harris talked about this, and we as a team are working to say, well, how do we? What is Catalyst for? Who is Catalyst for? How does it best use Cardano Treasury money, and who does it bootstrap it in the process of all of that? And I have my own personal opinions. We've all got opinions here, and ultimately it's a community. It needs to be a community decision ultimately, because it's community's money.
Yeah.
It's not IOG's money. We try to facilitate it as best we possibly can, but these edge cases, as we're seeing now, are coming up. And Rick made a good point. Is it something that is a lesson learned for many of us? Probably. What it is. Full stop. It is a lesson learned already.
I would like to support what Jack's saying here. So basically, the rules of the game were laid out for Fund 9. The rules of the game were executed. I think a couple thousand people voted for Daedalus Turbo at random because they used Daedalus and they said, wow, yeah, Daedalus Turbo sounds good. Most human beings out there in the world do not have time for all this stuff. They see the title, they see the stars, they click Daedalus Turbo. I'm going to guess that is the highest probability of what happened. And so we already have the rules of the game laid out. And if you want to change it for Fund 10, let's get the rules published before Fund 10. And I think the way forward is you simply execute the rules of the game, and you find out what failed, and then you fix the rules so the next time we play the game, it might prevent something like this. Like, for example, recent hacks on Ethereum, like the Optum network, it lost $15 million worth of tokens. I don't think they were really worth 15 million, but that's what happened. And that was a big lesson learned for them. And their lesson learned was make sure the smart contract is in the right place. Right. And so this could be a $750,000 lesson for us to learn and say, wow, I guess the rules of the game aren't correct. And now we have to fix them and let the current situation execute. I know you don't like that.
Yeah,
I'm anticipating future proposals. We're going to see proposals for $5 million and $10 million in the future. We're going to see massive. Someone might need to fuel a rocket to put world mobile technology into space, right?
Guys, we got to be clear. The back end, the milestones, that's awesome. We're going to make ourselves better. That's great. But the front end was a systemic failure, right? We got to maybe figure out how. Maybe it's a dollar amount. I don't know what it is, but where we can at least raise community awareness to where, I don't know what the answer is, but when we tell every voter and place a proposal like that very high up, they're going to click on it. We did it to ourselves. So let's just acknowledge that.
The system, we did it to ourselves with the system we're using. How do you fix the system?
Yeah, it's an interesting. Look, we're focusing on this proposal naturally because that's the topic, right? And it had the most amount of ADA applied to it in the yes and no combination, and it was pretty polarizing, because there was some that saw value in it, and some that didn't see feasibility or for whatever reasons, right? So yeah, I mean, and I think I agree with Rick. Generally speaking, it's a populist title. It 10 times. Sounds great. And I think that gets people's attention. We know there are issues with the fact that people don't read proposals fully, don't necessarily understand it completely, and there's also 1,000 proposals, so you've got to read how many of them and then vote on them all as well. So lots of things that we all recognise. Fund 10 will be a bit of a soft reset on many different levels, and it's not necessarily fair just to pinpoint the turbo proposal. That there are other proposals as well, as has been mentioned, that we need to just put some more guardrails in place. I think that would be accepted and welcomed by most of us here. Me personally, I want to see that happen. So we're going to be, watch this space. But as Rick said, it's going to be before Fund 10. We're going to be publicizing and socializing the changes in a sort of special town hall we're earmarking before Fund 10 starts. So again, the playing field is level. Everyone understands what they're going into. And ultimately, it's still an experiment. We're still learning. It as the first slide says, iterations may differ greatly from one to another. And this is exactly what this could be. But we, IOG have a role here to steward Cardano Treasury funds. We recognize that even though the community gives consent to what direction money should go, we still have an ultimate responsibility for making sure that is used effectively and just in accordance with our ethos as a company and the vision that we have for Cardano as well. So as Tim, my colleague, mentioned in chat, milestone reporting will very much help guardrail how much funds go out. This is for all projects, but how much funds go out and when they go out based on their achievements. And so it's not necessarily a black and white statement to say that we're going to lose 750 or 750 will go out the door and then we'll see it again or whenever. That this new approach, thankfully, is in place for Fund 9 to not just for the Turbo one, but for everything that's over 75K.
Yeah, I have a potential near-term solution in mind that I think could produce some valuable resorts. I think maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I think everyone here would love to have more live interaction with the proposer. And I think Bullish Dumpling brought up a great point in regards to the Cardano community's focus on Twitter Spaces and how valuable of a platform that could be. And so it seems as though the proposer wants to communicate via idea scale. So maybe on this kind of effort of a petition, maybe instead of going to change.com, we could go to idea scale, comment that we'd love to set up a time for a Twitter space, and then have a Twitter space where the whole Cardano community can come, put some attention on this proposal. And in the best case scenario, you now have the Cardano community knows about a proposal that could produce results should it be feasible. And then in the worst case, you have a lot of attention on this proposal so that you can have a lot of checks and balances by the wonderfully technically gifted individuals of the Cardano community. So if that sounds of interest to anyone and anyone might have a platform on Twitter that would be a good spot to host a Twitter space like that, I personally think that would be a really helpful outcome, at least for something that we could do immediately.
I like the idea of posting something on idea scale. I'm sure many people here will love to host on Bullish Dumpling. I'm sure we'll love to do it. Rick has done a few Twitter spaces. I myself run one with Cardano over coffee every day, Monday to Friday.
Yeah, I don't think a Twitter space solves the problem though.
No, it's just going to exacerbate it. It's going to bring.
It's just like, yeah, you're just bringing the pitchforks and the torches for someone you've already deemed to be a witch. I mean, I don't have solutions, but like I said, the rules of the game have been played, and the game is in play. So execute the game by the rules that were laid out.
I mean, that's a very defeatist attitude, Rick. I mean, like there's the opportunity.
How is that defeatist?
Fair.
Well, because there's an opportunity to set a different precedent, right? There's right now we have a 1A to 1 vote system. There is an opportunity to say, okay, well, if the community overwhelmingly feel that, yeah, this isn't feasible, this isn't right, a mistake was made by maybe people with large bags but small brains, then we can have a quadratic voting system to go, okay, well, does the community en masse disagree on the do more people who have a stake in the place disagree, and then have that check and balance in place to stop more projects like this getting funded in the future.
I'm agreeing with you. That is a different set of rules for a different game. I'm just saying the current game, the proposals have been put up, the votes have been executed, the proposal has been approved. Right now, we do not have an approved process for overturning the proposal. As much as I don't like it, I do not agree we need a Daedalus Turbo. We already have a Daedalus, we already have Eternal, we already have plenty of wallets. I don't think we need a Daedalus Turbo. But what I'm saying is,
I've got
every game in the world is you lay out the rules, the game is now in play.
And I
okay, can we can we confirm what the distribution amount is? Even if we choose to say, let's take milestones, do we know how much they're being distributed for every milestone? Because it's usually a fixed sum. Do we know that sum?
That will be determined by the milestones that get set up.
They got to present them. So really what this comes down to is, you know, IOG is being very fair here. And so they're you know, Harris said, we're eagerly awaiting your milestones. And so they're either going to hit them or they're not, and they better be good. You know,
and the milestones have to be approved. The milestones have to be approved by IOG. That's all of us who have proposals that are falling under this milestone plan. All it says that they are subject to.
You muted yourself. But there is also one more filter, which is after they set the milestone, assuming it gets now also accepted, then there might be 3 months before the first milestone. So they get like 5,000, 10,000, because assuming if it presents, I have 10 developers, I need 10K right now, then they have to prove who are these developers, and that may be harder. So maybe he starts with like, I'm gonna start off on my own, then he doesn't need 10K, then he starts off with maybe 2,000 or 3,000. After the first month, he has to put the progress report in, and now again, our community turn. Now this is the first time we can actually put the brake on that proposal and say, this progress report is not enough if we see it doesn't reach to the milestone. And that actually happens every month. So there is that also to wait.
I want to make a statement though.
I wanted to say something really quick. There is value if all we get from this is a report of the entity of this project. There's value in that if it's a detailed report on the fact that Daedalus as it is efficient. So like if we can get at least that kind of report, whether the feasibility study, if it is determined to be infeasible, like if this proposal does get a certain funding just for the feasibility study, and then there's an infeasibility report, then that's valuable in itself, and I think that should be considered.
I mean, the problem isn't with Daedalus, the problem is, or Daedalus Turbo, whatever, the problem is with Catalysts letting through, you know, projects that aren't feasible, they're getting through the net. So we should be problem sensing for a solution to, one, how can we make less get through the net that aren't feasible? But two, should we not have a check and balance in place after the fact that goes, okay, well, you know, we'll do a feasibility assessment after voting's finalized. It turns out this is impossible, right? And if it's impossible, how do we fix it?
There are problems with that approach in terms of how you can search the system space for possible solutions to problems, and because it's a detriment to the ability for people to search the system place if you put too many prerequisites in place for someone to actually try to complete some experiment or study.
Well, we had an interesting meeting today. We were talking about milestones, and it was brought up, is hiring a dev a milestone? And Rick said, no, hiring a dev's not a milestone. It's a prerequisite.
It's prerequisite.
This guy doesn't even have a team.
Yeah, hiring a developer is not a milestone.
I mean, we want this asset to be spent effectively, yeah? We want it to be spent effectively.
Should we go to the hands, guys?
Yeah, let's go to hands.
I wanted Zoe could go.
Let's go to the hands.
You're like catastrophic. Okay. Let's see. So I wanted to respond on the process parts because proposal assessors assess three things: impact, feasibility, and auditability. So this stuff is highly abstract, and the auditability is not even auditability, it's more like accountability or something. So there's also another part of the process outside of the PA part, which is at the very beginning. It's insight sharing, and it is also during the proposal submission stage or even before. So, that part, that's where the challenge team onboards proposals and stuff. And it's also the time when comments are open. as soon as proposals get submitted and stuff, and then finalize them and stuff, and then the comments close. So everybody that is super critical and stuff and goes through that stuff is either a proposal assessor or commented before. And those comments before are super rare. So there is space and stuff, but it's not well communicated. Almost nobody knows about it, obviously, because nobody raised it in here. So yeah, we have definitely to do a better job in communicating what the process actually is, where are the opportunities, where is the possibility to say this and that, and where to function as this and that and whatever. Next hand, Henry.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, and if someone wants to respond to Zoe, I'll wait. Does someone have a specific response to Zoe? All right, I'll go ahead. So I'm joining the discussion late, and so I have a quick question. Is the proposer still here? Who is the proposer? All right, not here anymore. You know, I do think this individual is getting, you know, quite a bit of attention, but I think the focus should be on the processes. And so thinking about a couple of things that maybe could address the concerns here. If we start before the voting, I've been advocating for a while that the challenge teams should have the ability to set minimum and maximum budgets per project on their challenge. I think on the minimum side, we have a lot of very small projects that require all the same overhead. And how can you are they really adding value at that small level? And then on this large side, right, you don't really want one project to take up most of the funds. And that's what we're facing in this situation. So I think that boundary is needed. And then at the voting, I'm interested to know from someone within the IOG team, do we have the distribution of weights on this particular project? Because this would be a good one to analyze. I've heard anecdotally that there were a lot of down votes and a few big up votes on this one. And it would be really interesting to see how the voting would have come out differently in either the quadratic voting or some other voting method so that we have that analysis. And then the third comment is, I think this milestone initiative is very important. Ordinarily, you know, we're all in a new space now, but ordinarily when you win a proposal, the next stage is to sign a contract, right? And we don't have that right now within Catalyst. And oftentimes you fail at the contract stage, you know, if you don't come to terms. So I think this implementation of the milestones is a very positive step, and it has the feel of you still have to sign a contract. And it sounds like the contract is going to be, well, the milestones are going to be agreed on with the challenge teams. I think that's important because that's the community role. And then IOG is still kind of central to all of this process. So that's important. I think, you know, those three modifications could make a lot of progress towards making sure we have high quality proposals that win and then actually get funded. And I'll take comments and again, I joined late, so that some of it might be repeating what others have said.
I believe, real quickly, in regards to the on-chain data, we had a IOG member in here shortly, and he mentioned that the Jormungandr chain that they use is rather private, and so I don't know if they can release as much data as we might like. But from what he was saying, it did not seem as though there were any abnormalities specific to this proposal, and that there was a group of proposals that kind of had a somewhat similar voting experience. At least in
maybe
regard
Merrick, who's here, can update us on that, because it was Merrick who provided Votrek with the data from Fund 4 and 5 that enabled us to do this kind of analysis. But I know some changes have been made since then. So Merrick, can you quickly say like what data is available to do analysis on the current funding rounds?
No, you have to ask Jack. Jack was saying about the data, right? Because he was talking to Jormungandr team.
Oh, okay. I thought, well, you helped us, but that was months ago.
No, you know, back then in Fund 4 and Fund 5, the voting was public. So, in Jormungandr chain, when we were submitting the votes, we could retrieve the option that we voted on, like yes or no. Now, this is private. So what we can obtain is the number of votes.
Okay. Okay, fine. That's what I thought. Okay. It's good to confirm that. Thanks, Mayor.
Next hand, Albert.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to share some thoughts I've had on this whole issue. Listening to Rick speak about, we had rules that, we played by during Fund 9. And maybe the solution would be to change those rules going forward. And maybe that's an expensive lesson. That made me think a little bit about the whole process about, Charles Hoskinson at some point was asked on one of his Twitter spaces about, or maybe his AMA sessions, about what happens, somebody said it was very easy to get Catalyst funding. And his answer was that there's actually checks and balances, right? There's monthly reporting. So I don't know if there's been any precedent on projects maybe not delivering or, funds being discontinued. But if there is a precedent, then that can be used as a study to see what we can do for this round. And if there's not, then I think in a sense, we set ourselves up for something like this, right? Like, when would we ever have this discussion unless a project with a huge amount of funding gets funded that the community doesn't agree with? So I think in a sense, we needed Daedalus Turbo to maybe start talking about these things. So maybe this is my 2 cents. Maybe somebody from IOG can tell us a little bit how that happens.
Do we want
I don't know if anybody has more information about this or just my thoughts about this. I don't know if there's any project that has been discontinued due to lack of reporting or something.
So,
Does anybody of you
I
know?
kind of keep a little black book of like all kind of scammy, quote unquote, scammy projects, for lack of better terms. And one example is this project that got funded during Fund 2 or 3. And thankfully, those periods were like smaller pools. But then it got funded for like 10K to build a bridge between Cardano and Avalanche. In fact, it was meant to build a specific Avalanche subnet for the Cardano network, and it was funded for $10,000. Nothing's come out of that, and no level of chasing of like progress or anything has come out of that. Now, given it's from Fund 2, 3 thereabout, it's like, yeah, sure, it was like peanuts in comparison to like the grand scheme of like the treasury, but these things are very like out there. These are very common things out there. So if you're looking for like, oh, has this happened before? Oh, this happens plenty of times. Daedalus Turbo is just the most blatant of them all.
Right. It was big enough to incite this conversation, right?
Right.
Well, so just explicitly, there hasn't been a thing where the only reason why a proposal so far would not receive funding is if they do not report at all, right? I just aggregated all of the reports from Project Catalyst that people submit to get funding. And if you go through there, you just do a cursory scan, you will see a lot of blanks and NA and emojis and all of that stuff, right? So the answer is no, there hasn't been any precedent for you submitted a report but didn't get funding, right? So I think this milestone thing is a new check and balance to where if you submit a report, that report has to have meaning now, but that's a new thing as a Fund 9.
Okay, I don't think we're addressing the elephant in the room. And I mean, in all seriousness, it's a problem. Even though DREPS looks to solve the issue of there being so many things to vote on, right? And not having the time to do all the due diligence on everything that we should be voting on, which ultimately caused this issue, that surely a solution to this issue is that you have a shortlisting round and then a final voting round, right? A shortlisting round weeds out all the contenders and actually shows us which ones are popular. Then we have the finals round, which allows us to go, okay, now we've got a smaller pool of proposals to look at. We can dedicate more time to each individual proposal and uncover the problems with them, and then work with D-reps and work with the other stuff, and then maybe consider using quadratic voting for it, because Cardano should be for everyone, not just for the rich, but that's just me, right? So there's solutions to this, but we need to talk about, like, let's get like this written down with people, and let's actually like get communication to IOG and talk to them about what can improve. Because ultimately, if it's going to be the case that we're going to whine about this, they're going to get funded. He's going to get the cash anyway, right? So we're going to whine about this, and then nothing changes. Well, I think instead of having the unproductive conversation of, you know, is this good or is this bad, we should be more thinking like, what checks and balances that are fair can we put in the future, and hopefully get it for Fund 11, 12.
We go to Albert.
Pie in the sky.
Albert, go ahead.
You want to say anything else, or you about to lower hand?
Are you talking about, is my hand still raised? No, I'm done.
Okay. So yeah, I will echo what just Thomas said, because I think this discussion took a turn when somebody mentioned that we worked on a back end, which is, I think, very good that we have now milestones, more focus on the feedback or the progress reports. We actually show them now publicly. We're getting more columns to see what people are doing, what they are saying. And to move this up to the front end side, in a sense, I would make a shout out to Catalyst United team, who has been now being very active on talking about, okay, where do we focus the process changes, where we make working groups. So if you are heated up and you want to make a change for the next funding, I would encourage you to join up Catalyst United. If you don't know where it is, this video hopefully will be posted on a Swarm session if it's shared. I think it will be, because the co-owner himself left, so it has to go to one of the other hosts who is in this room. So yeah, and when you're participating in this kind of networks, which are making actual working groups, who are writing documentation and making governance proposals for IOG to accept, I think we have much more chance to actually getting something done, instead of in these kinds of calls where there's a lot of people having a different alternative solutions, which I think most of are good, but we need to know how to prioritize them, because I think there are many which are not even presented here yet, and there are not people here who have other alternative ideas how to actually improve the proposing stage, the visibility stage, segmenting stages, different road mapping, different challenge setting rules. So there is a lot of cool stuff to uncover, and I encourage again to check out Catalyst United. If you stay active, I might be invited to Innovation Fund Research. Thank you.
Thank you as well. I'm just going to jump in. And I also agree with what Thomas said, is in putting D-reps in, you're just putting in more middlemen. It's not really solving the problem. It's just delegating the problem to one person. If you think about, we have this Daedalus Turbo, and if you go to the beginning of the process and you put the filter on the front of the process, you'll probably have better results at the end of the process. And what I mean by that is, if you stop and ask anyone who is technically competent and say, do we need a Daedalus Turbo? Most of you are probably going to answer no. Okay. We have a Daedalus and we have light wallets. What does a Daedalus Turbo solve? What increase in capability does it provide? Really, there aren't any that it provides. And so what you do is, before proposals are submitted, is you do an analysis that says, what does Cardano need? Okay. Not what the voters want. So Daedalus Turbo is a good example where we think we don't need a Daedalus Turbo, but when it went out to the voters, there's at least 2,000 voters out there who said, yeah, I need a Daedalus Turbo because my Daedalus is slow. So these voters voted for it. But if you put the filter at the beginning of the process and say, what do we need, what do we want, and what is most important, and what do we need right now, the stuff that you need and what you need right now kind of bubbles to the top. Now, does that eliminate a lot of the proposals of the people who are sitting in the room right now? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it helps you refocus your efforts on things that are more important. I did a survey on Twitter, and it got a number of 693 votes, and 67% of the people who responded do not want to do more than 100 proposals. They don't want to look at 1,200. They want to look at less than 100, and then it gets lower as it goes up to 5,000 and infinite. And the higher number of proposals you have, the less people are interested in voting on that. No one wants to vote on 5,000. Only 8% wanted to vote on 1,000, and 67% wanted to vote on less than 100. Okay, so there is also a problem of there's just too many proposals. I think that's pretty obvious. But nobody here would want to say, well, my proposal's less important. But if we at least had a list of what does Cardano need right now? Like if there's a proposal saying, I'm going to launch an NFT project, I'm going to launch a DEX. Do we need that? Well, we already have 5 DEXs running and 5 more coming online. Do we need another, another one of this, another one? Those already exist. What's missing? Well, we're missing layer 1 to layer 2 connections, right? Layer 2 is still getting built out. You're missing rollups. You're missing Web 2 to Web 3 connections. You're missing some simple user experiences. We're missing marketing. And when I asked people on another video, I said, what do you guys need? They said, we need developers. Well, how do you get developers? Well, you got to pay them, right? And so all those things came up. And if you look, if you do an analysis and say, what does Cardano need? That helps you identify the priorities, which kind of relates to what the previous gentleman was saying.
Rick, I have a question for you on this idea. Do you think those needs could be defined by the challenge teams? So challenge teams are already writing kind of objectives. But then what if there was a second step of after the proposer assessments, after that assessment process, the challenge teams had the authority to kind of do some filtering. Maybe they have the authority to filter out 10 or 20% of the projects. I mean, there's a danger in giving them too much authority, but like you said, I guess my question is, if you're going to have this filter process early, who are you going to give that authority to do that filtering?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think if they have the technical competence or the marketing skills to encapsulate that, maybe they could. Probably a good way to do it is to build a Cardano petitioning system, which is something missing. We don't have a petitioning system. So someone could build that and then agree to the rules of the game and allow the ADA voters to vote with their ADA via this petitioning system.
Yeah, I mean, one thing
and then that might give them the authority to do something like that.
One of the things I was thinking along that lines is if there were sort of some objective standards that the challenge team sets up front. And then without getting political, they can filter out projects that didn't meet those standards before it goes to a community vote.
So, Kenrick, I'm not sure if you've been a challenge team member, or Rick, I don't know if you've been a challenge team member, but as someone who's been a challenge team member and as of until recently a challenge team leader, as a challenge team personnel, there's very little that's really brought out to you. It's pretty much like almost lackadaisical. Okay, your job is to show up on a Zoom call to check proof of humanity or check if the person who's working in your challenge setting is real, and that's pretty much it. After that,
yeah, I agree. But part of my point is they should have more resources, and in other words, get paid better, and then have
true,
more.
But there's no structures. There's just no structures in the challenge team setting. It's one of the things that have kind of influenced my stepping away from that role as a challenge team leader myself. But then, like, these are structures that, like, it's like, oh, we are trying to go for decentralization, so we don't want to kind of make these, static things. Like, it's either we know what we want or we do not. That's pretty much the problem which we're dealing with now.
Yeah, and I'd like to follow up with one last point, and I'll put my hand down and yield the floor. And that is our current method. Here's the weakness in our current method that we need to solve. So the current method of giving something a 4 or 5 star rating is based on how well it is written, not how feasible or do we need it, right? And I'll give you an example. If I go to a restaurant to buy a taco and I have Yelp, and I can get on Yelp, I can give it 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. Okay, most people are familiar with Yelp to some extent, right? And I look at the menu and I read the menu and they have a picture of a delicious taco and it's like awesome. I'm like, wow, that taco is great. So I go on Yelp and I give it 5 stars because I looked at the menu. But I don't know how that taco actually tastes. I don't know how they're making it. There could be cockroaches in the kitchen. I don't freaking know. But if someone knows, there, you know, and there's some level of credibility, it's just an example. But yeah, it just needs a little more marketing expertise and technical expertise on the front end is just my suggestion, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for your
So
time.
just to add something in here, to those, like, definitely 500 proposals seems like a reasonable amount to go through. Definitely, we're dealing with a lot of proposals to deal with. What do we, the people in this room, think about, say, a lottery system for finalizing, say, a bucket of proposals? What do we think about lottery systems to kind of get proposals through the door? Like some kind of random picking of proposals to say, oh, these are like the top 500 proposals for each category to go through. And if like they don't make it past some assessment stage, then you just bring up another cell, like, I don't know, lucky 100 proposals.
Can we stop trying to centralize it? Because that's the solution that's being proposed. Hey, why don't we just give more power to individuals so they can have oversight? That's like antithetical to the objective. Like,
well, you don't need a human to randomly select stuff. You have algorithms.
Okay. The randomly, you're right. The randomly selecting stuff's a bad idea in general, right? Like just saying,
Well,
okay, well, we'll just.
It's an idea proposed.
Throw a pin at a dartboard and hope for the best. But okay, respectfully, like, surely we should be bringing this out to more people, right? We should bring it out to more people, more views on it, more votes, more people incentivized to vote, right? Also, by their vote having a larger impact. And yes, we have to respect the fact that it's run like a business, and so much the more ADA you've got, the more impact to your vote, and that has its place within the system. But also, should the wider Cardano community and should the people in the future that were onboarded into Cardano, so someone who's just been onboarded into Cardano through our ventures in Africa, they have like 500 ADA, just enough to vote. Should their vote be basically pointless because that's how it is in the current system? Or should we actually build a system that, one, scales in a decentralized way rather than just, you know, oh, I'm going to give you power and you can have oversight? Like, no, dumb. Like, or should we build in a way that goes, okay, let's push power to the edges while also maintaining true to the core of what we've built so far?
Yeah, that's all really good points. And on a petitioning system could help solve something like that, where the petition is signed with DIDs and the votes are cast with ADA, for example, or quadratic, however you want to do it. But what I imagine 3 years from now, the way the final voting rounds would work is you don't have all the stuff that we're doing right now, all the churn that we go through right now. It's simply these proposals are going to appear in a list, and you can connect your wallet and you can vote in favor of proposals. And as they bubble their way up the list, they become eligible for voting, and you just click on it and vote inside the wallet. And all of this mobile app, phone app, idea scale, all that becomes obsolete because it's more automated and integrated. But that's like on the 3 or 4 year time horizon, and it eliminates all the churn and the ambiguity. So it's probably best to have.
I have to go, Rick, but Snaprilla has actually implemented something like that with their system. So that might be interesting to take a look at. Good to see everyone.
Rich, I'd just like to address something you said about the current process of what the PAs are doing. The original intention of that was quality assurance of writing. If you looked at the early proposals that were in Fund 3, 4, and 5, they were very low quality of what was written. So the purpose has been fulfilled now, and we need to iterate. I totally agree. We need to iterate beyond what's currently there, but we still also need to keep the quality of the writing up. So whatever we do should build upon what's there. So that's my point to what you're saying about the quality of the writing. It was needed at the time.
Yeah, I agree. Good writing is also important, but technical feasibility and need is also important. They're more important.
Totally. We need to iterate away from ensuring quality of writing and looking towards the needs of the Cardano ecosystem. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And hopefully we can work through adjustments. I'm interested to see what Fund 10 looks like what what's IOG suggested, and what can the community build upon that to help this process get to that point? That's what I'm interested in seeing.
Yeah.
Tommy,
So really quickly,
hand up. Would you?
Just a quick comment. Sorry about Rick has been talking about maybe, the example with Yelp about the impact. Well, there's a category that's called impact for the assessment. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on this? Because if it works as it is supposed to work, then impact would be the place to actually get proposals that don't fit, or maybe that we don't necessarily see as a community that they have a good utility, right? And for the feasibility, well, there's feasibility. So I think the problem is that these categories are not being used as they're supposed to, and I think that's more of a BPA problem. But that's my view on the issue.
But is it for those PAs to make a judgment call at that point of whether it's feasible, or do we need another group of people who are more suitable to understand the feasibility?
I think you need a group that's suitable. Some of those PAs might be competent. We just don't know. Some of those PAs might be able to look at the technical feasibility, but their charter does not say that. Right now we have zero filter. Right now, this current round, we threw 1,200 proposals at the voters, and because nobody wants to be centralized, we took 1,200 proposals, threw them at all the voters, and now the voters are the filter. Okay, that's not going to work. Obviously, we've learned that. So yeah, the PAs, the people assessing, the people who are assessing, we paid $800,000 to allow a $750,000 product get through. So we lost what did we lose on that? Well, not lost, but that's about a $1.6 million experiment, $1.5 million experiment we just did. Okay, so let's learn from that, move forward. And if the VPAs and the PAs or the CAs need to be assessing feasibility and need to have the skills to be able to do that, then that's something that needs to happen.
I'm going to run in a second, guys. I've been listening in, same people talking all the time. Can I just make a quick point, please? I've been a proposer over the last 3 funds. I know we've kind of gone from Daedalus to more general discussion around the Catalyst itself. As a proposer who's invested a lot of time writing proposals, campaigning for them, building community around them, it was very disappointing to see the Fund 9 results where we had 119 million upvotes, but 112 million downvotes. Without visibility on voting chain data, we have no way to assess whether there's a problem with our proposal, whether people are just for good reasons. There's, we lost fair and square, and it's just our proposal is not the right fit, or whether in fact there is some collusion going on, or more sinister things happening where a handful of whales are saying, no, we don't like these guys for whatever reason, which is all fine, but we don't know. So that really affects our decision whether to even go forward with Catalyst at all. And when people start talking about things, we're like, well, let's just have this idea of a lottery where we randomly throw out proposals. What's the point for me as a founder, as a builder, to invest time putting in a proposal in Catalyst when there's just so much randomness to the process, where this needs to be 100% merit-based, and in my opinion. And so, and again, if that means the best 100 proposals reach the top eventually, great. But let's not throw some random lottery thing into it, in my opinion. And downvoting to me is quite toxic. I think it's adding a lot of gamification to this. You can argue whether that's a good or bad part of quadratic voting system or not. But quite simply, there's so many problems. I've seen comments come by in this thread here earlier, we just talk and don't make any changes. One change we can make very quickly is to simply eliminate downvoting in the next round and let projects pass or fail based on whether people believe in them or not. Believe in them, strike the or not. So we are very seriously having to do a gut check now whether it's even worth us for us to stay in Catalyst anymore, because it's starting to feel like a lot of wasted effort with a lot of unpredictability. And we are people that believe in Project Catalyst. We believe in decentralization. We believe in investing extra time to make decentralization and decentralized governance work. But we still have a huge problem attracting other talent to our platform, to Catalyst itself. And right now it's a gong show. I would not advise other builders or founders to come and try this path. I'm super grateful for the opportunities Catalyst has given us. I am, a successful proposer in other funds, It's given my projects and passions and things that I believe in that I want to bring into the decentralization space an opportunity to actually do R&D and have some liftoff. But you know, there's really, it's to me, it's a really serious the point that we're at right now as far as like as a community. We can all argue about creating the best voting system. The majority of people in these calls are not builders, they're not proposers. It's just people nitpicking and kicking at proposals and proposers from the sidelines. And it's really creating a toxic environment, in my opinion. So I would love Rick to throw up a poll because he has the greatest Twitter following to say downvoting yes or no. Because I have been saying this for the last 2 weeks and I don't still have a good sense of whether other people believe in that or not. But this is the founder's point of view, and I got to go into a meeting now so I can keep building my projects. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Peter. I just want to jump in here and say, break a discussion, guys. I have to go help my girlfriend move one of her class pets, and I told her I would leave at 4 p.m. and it's 3:55. So love you, but the recording is over. Peace out.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. This was good discussion today.